Short background. Troubled childhood. Juvie. Blah blah blah. Anyways, get out of rehab and hop directly into probably the most toxic relationship on planet Earth. Relationship ends, and that's where this story begins. I was pretty busted up over it, and my buddy and his old lady swing by my house around midnight and invite me to a party at the lake. I refused at first, but figured why not? Hang out and drink with good people. We hop in his truck and drive out to the bluffs. Basically, the road circles down into a turnaround, and it's a 5-minute walk down to get to the water. We pull up and get out. I decide I need a minute before turning my social battery on, and tell them to go ahead and I'll smoke a cigarette and be right behind them. They say okay, and walk into the dark. As I drop the tailgate to sit and smoke, an old late 50s car pulls up. Beautiful car, growling V8, matte black with a red pinstripe. Fucking gorgeous car. The driver stops in the roadway and gets out. Literally, the moment my eyes make contact with him, I have genuine fear in my gut. Like I'm genuinely not scared of anything, and I've never before or since felt this fear. This fear was fucking primal. Anyway, dude steps out. Black suit, black shoes, blood red silk shirt and tie, square jaw, slicked back hair, and perfect white teeth. With a soothing yet intimidating deep voice, he starts making small talk and asks for a smoke. I give him one, and he lights it. He asks if I like his car and offers to give me a ride. I decline, and he immediately gets back in the car, starts it up, and drives off. Now this road takes about 2 minutes to drive up to get back to the highway. There's only one way in and out, and you can see the entire road from where I was. I hear my buddy yelling my name. He's pissed drunk already, yelling about why I'm taking so long. I say I literally smoked one cigarette. He says it's been a few hours, and asks what the hell I'm doing. I point to the road and say, I was talking to that guy. We look. There's nobody there, and there's no way he got to the road in that loud-ass car without being heard or seen. He and his car disappeared, and nobody saw or heard him but me. This happened to me when I was around 6 years old in the mid-90s. My father was a Finnish carpenter at the time, and I went to work with him one day. He was working on restoring an old hotel called the Feather River Inn in Plumas County, California. The inn was built in 1915 and was also a prep school. It has now been vacant for a long time. Back then, I knew the inn had a history of being haunted, or at least very spooky. My dad had told me about the place and about the stories he had heard. He later had his own story. I was little at the time and didn't really think too much about it, but I remember I was excited to go and see it in person. The 3rd floor was abandoned and was really in bad disrepair. I remember it being really dark and in shambles. We went to the 3rd floor to look around because there were really weird paintings in some of the rooms. They were painted in all black and white swirls, like hypnosis circles. The crew imagined boys from the prep school probably drew them, but no one knew for sure. The strangest thing was they even found mummified cats in one of the walls up there. The 2nd floor was where they were working that day. As we walked there, we passed colonies of bat balls on the ceilings. They were literal balls of bats all clinging together. The place was very eerie. So I remember the 2nd floor was shaped like a big square, with one hallway around the perimeter. The halls were very long. The part of the hall they were working in was in good shape and well lit. There were other guys working all down this part, busy doing things. I was standing at one end, looking all the way down. I realized someone was peeking around the corner at the other end of the hall. It was a woman. You can tell I was little at the time because I just assumed it was the wife of one of my dad's crew members. She had long, black, curly hair, fair skin, dark eye makeup, and dark clothes. She really resembled this man's wife, so I excitedly started to wave at her, but she didn't wave back, and I did it for a while too. I felt really confused. I started to feel strange because no one else in the hall was reacting. She was just deadpan staring at me, so I turned to look behind myself. Maybe she was looking past me. When I turned back, she was gone. I thought this was weird, so I walked down the hall and turned the corner. When I looked down this part of the hall, it was totally black and all a mess. They hadn't even started working on this part yet. That's when I got pretty scared because it all sank in at once. I realized the position that the woman was standing in was not normal. You could not see her lower half at all from around the corner. It was like just her upper half was sticking out from around the side. At that point, I realized that her hair was not curly. It was like out of control. She wasn't fair-skinned, she was basically pure white, and her dark makeup was actually just two big vacant holes. It's crazy looking back on this experience because it's like, what on earth was I thinking waving at that? It is also strange that it took a while for me to process how creepy she looked. I can still totally see her and the whole experience in my mind's eye. I can't remember what I did next, but I know I have talked about it with my parents in the past. Basically, everyone who has spent time there has had a strange experience. Whatever I saw, it was so vivid and there that I interacted with it. Any thoughts or ideas? Back in 1999, my dad's boss asked if he could help him install some windows at his house on Saturday. And my father said, yeah, sure, but I'm going to have my son with me. He said that was fine. And when Saturday came around, I had to go. Now, there wasn't anything wrong with the house on the outside, but I remember having a weird feeling once inside, kind of like being watched. They turned on the TV so I wouldn't be in their way, and it sat on a large entertainment center below the stairway. I was watching cartoons when I heard footsteps above, and saw a girl run across the stairway and into a room. Now, me being a kid, I was thinking maybe she wanted to play. I went upstairs and into the room, and nobody was there. Around that time, my father was getting done, and they couldn't find me. So they yelled, and I came out and said, I'm up here. He got on me and said I was a guest, and I don't need to be wandering around. But his boss said it was fine. I asked who the girl was, and he said it's just us here. But they had that oh shit look. Years later, I told my father that I swore I saw a girl on the stairway running, and he told me about a family that lived there before. That this mom had drowned her kids in the bathtub, then shot and killed the grandmother. The oldest child jumped out of the window and ran to the neighbors for help. I thought he was joking, but I found a news article dated 1948. Mom murders family because she thought the devil was going to get her kids. A story about my emergency gear. Okay, so I'm a prepper. Not because I believe something terrible is going to happen, but just as a precaution in case something does. So I was going through my oh shit sack and decided to check the seal on my gas mask. It's important to know if it fits before you need it. Sliding it on, everything fit tight and was all sealed up nicely. The only issue was a blockage in the nose shroud. Blocking the exit port with my hand, I blew as hard as I could. And like a genie from a bottle, a wolf spider that was approximately half the size of a Volkswagen Beetle popped up out of nowhere and attached himself to my face like an amorous face hugger from the Aliens franchise. It was at this point that I discovered that a good seal on a gas mask can only be achieved by locking it to your face in a manner only slightly less complex than a shibari bondage dress. The spider, we shall henceforth describe him as the bastard, seemed to have decided that he was going to make the best of a bad situation, and began his morning calisthenics by galloping laps inside of the mask. And while I am a supporter of a solid cardiovascular exercise regimen, I must admit that the bastard could have probably waited a picosecond to start, while I was busy thrashing about in a life-and-death struggle with an M61 mask that somehow formed an unbreakable seal around my head, and would require amputation to remove. There was serious consideration of that option sometime during the 10th century of my eternal struggle. That was approximately the same time that the bastard had decided he had gotten his heart rate into a nice range, and set about in what I can only describe as an amateur version of an Indiana Jones reenactment, as he began trying to find some dark hole or cave to explore. It was at this point, as his leading legs began to probe about my sinus cavity, that I was overcome with the brilliant idea of Hulk smash. While not the most profound idea in existence, I can admit that I learned several things that day. Firstly, that there are many ways to smash your face while wearing a gas mask. Second, that headbutting the desk is not the best option. And finally, that the bastard was not only female, but a mommy. As such, during her escapades so far, I had been far too focused to note the billions of microscopic babies that had been clinging to her back during this whole adventure. And while I applaud a young mother just trying her best, I feel it was wrong to try and bring her kids to work that day. Needless to say, I did in fact smash my head against the desk, squishing her against my face, which is not in my top 10 best experiences I've had, thank you very much. Little did I know that our children would take that as a sign that it was time for them to strike out on their own. They exploded off her like shrapnel from a grenade, filling every inch of available space with billions upon billions of tiny spiders. At this point, I was blessed with the strength of 10,000 men and ripped the gas mask off my face, snapping the restraining straps and launching the offending article of safety equipment on a ballistic trajectory toward the living room, as I ran screaming from the house, diving into the kiddie pool outside with all the grace and poise of a belly-flopping walrus, as I held my own head underwater and screamed at a volume that had whales the world over glancing around in confusion. I will confess that I thought that I was okay with spiders. It turns out that I am not. I could give you a million examples of times I felt scared or paranoid playing in the woods as a kid or a young adult. It's a beautiful place, and I spent my entire childhood getting lost out there by myself or with friends. As kids, we never got too far out there, but you could actually see the progression of us venturing further and further out as we got older, because of forts and carvings we would leave. This one particular time, like 1,000 times before, my friend and I went out there. We had just graduated high school. It was our last summer of freedom, and we spent the entire time camping and hiking out there. We had decided to try and find a new place to set up camp, and walked for what felt like a few miles before we came to a nice clearing. The area was relatively new to both of us. We got the camp set up and fire going, and the plan was to wait until nightfall, smoke some weed, and play Monopoly. For sake of backstory on my friend and I, my buddy is a smaller, real goofy guy, but comes from a family of foresters, and always had a deep understanding of all the trees and different plants you come across. He had no fear of going and camping out by himself. If I spent 10,000 hours in the woods, he probably spent 50,000. As for me, I'm a taller, sturdier guy, and as we got older, I spent more time worried about women and sports, and the woods became a place for small parties. Also, I never had the balls to camp out alone. In fact, older me wouldn't go far at all when I was alone, because I could never shake the feeling of being watched, which was just paranoia, but still an uneasy feeling. Anyway, camp is set, Fire is going, but it's getting lower and needs wood. The sun is down, and we're both cutting up and having a good time. My friend is sitting on this little chair he always brought, and loading up his makeshift bong, and I was crouched, breaking some excess limbs off some of the logs we had gathered for the fire. All of a sudden, this strong breeze cuts through the clearing. I couldn't tell you if it was the suddenness of it or what, but my friend and I both stopped immediately and looked at each other. The breeze went just long enough to flicker our fire down to a small flame. We both sat completely still in almost total darkness. Neither of us said a word. Across from us, on the other side of the fire, we could hear footsteps. They sounded like somebody was running, and would slow to a walk and then run again, definitely on two legs. By the sound of it, they were pacing back and forth over the same spot. Then, just like it started, it stopped, with a softer crunch on the underbrush. I knew by the sound that it had crouched down. I was still crouched, and knew I was staring right at it in the dark. My friend grabbed my shoulder and said, "Buddy." And when he did, I felt this surge of fear come over me. I could feel it and hear it in him. I had been so fixed on the footsteps and rationalizing what I heard that I hadn't even considered being afraid. But this was true fear. It was raw and made me feel helpless. A few seconds later, I heard my friend grab some leaves, and he dropped them on the fire. For the split second the leaves covered the fire, we were in pure darkness. Then the fire sprang to life. We both quickly grabbed more leaves and brush and threw it on the fire. I got some sticks and logs on there, and neither of us took our eyes off the spot or moved much for over an hour. Finally, the leaves crunched and it slowly walked off. Whatever it was had sat crouched, watching us without moving for far longer than any animal would. It wasn't until after the footsteps disappeared that I realized the smell had disappeared as well. It smelled like a paper mill, spoiled eggs almost. For the rest of the night, besides whispered remarks, neither of us really moved. We didn't go into the tent, and I had a very short light sleep on the ground with my head rested on my hands, and my friend didn't get any sleep. In the morning, we packed up and silently walked back home. To this day we talk about it, and ever since that night, my forester friend has not camped by himself out there. My story is when I first started dating my now husband. I'll refer to him as B. We were both 20, and his parents had asked that we stay over at their house to house sit while they were away on vacation for a few days. I readily agreed, because I knew they'd have no problem with me bringing my dog. They paid for food and bought groceries, and live closer to town than I do, so I was happy to, even when B had to work since I wasn't working. It sounded super relaxing. First night went smoothly. Typical night. We had pizza and watched a movie, and went to bed early because it was Sunday, and B worked early the next day. I had a nightmare that night, but couldn't remember it when I woke up, so it made me anxious, but I couldn't put my finger on why. My dog Abby is an ESA, and so she did her thing and was immensely helpful. I cleaned some, did some laundry for my mother-in-law since she was behind, and just hung out. I got a call midday that B's cousin was dropping her dog off. There was a disagreement between her and her parents, and the dog was going to live with my in-laws from now on. Cool, I loved the dog. Oakley. More than happy to take him in for them early. B came home, and all was well. My in-laws have an entertainment system and a bar in their basement, so we decided to go downstairs to watch our favorite shows for the night. My Abby girl went down fine, but Oakley would not go downstairs. Plain refused at the top. He was so freaked out about the situation he started shaking harder than I've ever seen a dog shake. He was petrified. I finally told B that we would just stay upstairs. It was no big deal. As we ate, I started thinking about how Abby never let her guard down in the basement. She would face the bathroom they had down there and never leave my side. She would stand in front of me, and a few times she even growled. But it's an old house, so I figured it was nothing. I went to sleep that night, and I had the most real and petrifying nightmare I've ever had in my life, still to this day. I was laying in the bed I had fallen asleep in. I looked up, and then at the wall across from me, and it was there. It was this black thing, and it smelled like death and tar. Extremely tall, bending in the middle to not hit its head. Its proportions were wrong. Arms too long, legs too short, and angled awkwardly. It had long black hair that looked wet with how it clumped together. Black holes for eyes with blue lips. It was veiny and made an awkward sucking noise when it breathed. It had dull and sharp teeth, almost like some were broken. The worst part was its limp. It made a thud and dragging noise while it walked towards me, laughing. Not a booming laugh, but an internal laugh, like when you're trying to not show someone you're laughing. Yet its maniacal smile gave it away. He was excited I was scared. I started trying to scream. I woke up and he was still there, still coming towards me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, and was sobbing. I kept trying to scream, but it felt like I had a piano laying on my chest. Oakley came running from the living room and let out a huge snarl. I finally screamed, and I was so frantic I screamed for my mom since I thought I couldn't get my husband's attention. He flew up and turned on his side table light and looked at me. It was gone. I honestly felt that I had just dodged death. I called Oakley up on the bed, who was crying now and trying to get closer to me. He laid in my lap and essentially hugged me. My husband checked the entire house armed with a bat. He found my poor Abby locked in a bathroom crying and howling. She had been with Oakley when we went to sleep, so I'm not sure why or how she got locked in there. Once let out, she came and immediately checked on me and traded places with Oakley. Oakley then went to look around with my husband. He checked everywhere with him, except the basement. He again refused to go down, so my husband did a quick check and found no one down there. When he came upstairs, I explained I had to leave. I had to get away from that house for a while. I took the dogs and we went on an early morning food run. Then we drove for a bit. It was snowing like crazy and probably not my best idea, but I still felt safer than I had at the house. I did end up going back. The next night was my last night, so I just didn't sleep and stayed on the couch with the dogs laying on or near me. I've never been so happy to leave somewhere. I no longer house sit for them, and they have heard the story. I'm fine visiting for a few hours, but I can't do any more than that. I still feel watched and stalked. You would think his parents might find me nutty, but the worst part of the whole thing is that when I told them, they weren't surprised. They knew exactly what I was talking about. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. Links to all my shit are down in the description. We are going to do a skit, so that's coming in a second, but I need you guys to help me beat this fucking algorithm. I need some likes and shares. I need more ears on me. This is ridiculous. So if you can help me with that, I'd appreciate it. And I guess that's about it. Be good to animals, even people. See ya. Ripley, look what I got in the mail. No, this is not a toy. It's a shrink ray. Let's test this bitch out. Let's shrink, this lighter. Holy shit, it works. Okay, let me bring it back. Okay, let's try this. Sit. Stay. Let's make you bigger by 50%. Holy shit. Hey, big girl. You got a big ass for real now, Slooch. Okay, let me put you back. Alright, let's shrink something else. Oop.
Oops. Holy shit. Well, this isn't good. Oh, Ripley, stop. No more kisses. You might kill me. Jesus. Thank you, though. How the hell am I gonna get down from here? Ripley, come over here. Maybe I can jump from the couch onto your back and you can Falcor me out of here. Oh, okay, now that I'm a foot tall, you don't have to listen to me, huh? Come over here. I'll have to build a shelter and some dirty clothes or something until someone stops by. If someone stops by. You're gonna have to share some of your food and water with me, okay?
Gel, snema, bergsbus, herish.
Black shoes, black shoes. Okay. That's not what it says here. I just fucked up. I started thinking, white shoes, white hat, black shoes, Cadillac. Alright. Heep, heep, heep.
This is, ridiculous because all I gotta do is look out the window and she goes crazy.